I was very young when I got pregnant with my son Ethan. His father Eric and I got married shortly after I told him that I was expecting. We made it work for a year, but then decided that it would be best if we went our separate ways. But we remained friends, and I couldn't ask for a better father for Ethan. Eric is an amazing dad. We split our time equally throughout the week, and when Eric or I have to work, Ethan spends time with his grandparents or he goes to daycare. I'm so happy that Eric isn't one of those guys that just left me high and dry. I have a decent job, but I definitely can't provide everything that my son needs by myself. I'm very grateful for my parents. They pay for him to go to daycare while I work, and they also loaned me some money so that I could purchase a house for the two of us. Everything remained pleasant between Eric and I until Ethan was 5 years old. That's when he began dating a woman named Lacey. We'd both dated other people since the divorce, but there was something about this woman that was different. I'd never had this feeling before with any of the other women Eric dated and introduced me to, but she gave me a bad vibe. What made it even worse was that Ethan didn't like her either. And when I would try to talk to Eric about it, he would just say, "He'll get used to her, just give it some time." So I did, but after a few months, Ethan started to come home from his father's house with unexplained bruises. I don't mean the typical bruises that he would get from time to time like any rambunctious little boy. And when I asked him what happened, he would just tell me that he got hurt while playing, but I had a feeling that something else was going on. One time Ethan slipped up and told me that his father has been leaving him with Lacey all day while he goes to work. Immediately I thought, that's how he must be getting the bruises. Then he adds, "And she always gives me these nasty health shakes that taste disgusting." I told her I don't like them, but Dad tells me drink them anyway so that I don't make her feel bad. When I questioned his father about it, he brushed it off. He tells me, "Lacey just wants to help. She volunteered to watch him while I work, so it gives them a chance to get to know each other better." Another time Ethan told me something that really sent me over the edge. He said that he thinks Lacey lives at Dad's house now. I asked him why he thought that, and he told me that she had a toothbrush in the bathroom and she spent the night while he was over there. I didn't think anything of it. Having a toothbrush and spending the night doesn't necessarily mean she lives there. But then Ethan continues, "And when Dad was getting dressed for work this morning, I saw a lot of her clothes in his closet, and they weren't there last time I went over there." I think to myself, are you kidding me? They have only been dating for 2 months. I was livid. It seemed to me that Eric no longer had our son's best interest in mind. He hadn't even bothered to tell me that they moved in together beforehand so that I could talk to Ethan about it. That weekend when Eric came to pick up Ethan, I was prepared to chew him out, but I was shocked when I answered the door. Lacey was standing there with a smug smile plastered on her face. Not only that, she had her arms folded across her chest, making sure that her left hand was clearly visible. The diamond ring on her ring finger glistened in the early morning sunlight. I tried not to appear angry, but I failed miserably at that attempt. I asked her with an obvious attitude, "What in the hell do you want? Where's Eric?" She tells me that he had to work today, so he sent her to pick up Ethan instead. That same evil smile was still spread across her face. Looking at her standing on my doorstep, I could just smother her right then and there. But before I lost my temper in front of my son, I stepped back inside and slammed the door right in her face. When I peeked out the window a minute later, she was still standing there, stunned. Maybe she expected me to open the door and tell her that this was all some kind of a joke, but I assure you it wasn't. After a few more minutes passed by and she realized I wasn't coming back, she began to furiously bang at the door. I opened one of my kitchen windows and yelled outside, "Get the hell out of here before I call the police." A minute later, I received a phone call from Eric. I didn't even bother to answer. Finally, after calling me nonstop for 15 minutes and Lacey standing outside banging on the door and trying to peek through my windows, they both gave up. At 6 p.m., Eric shows up at my house. I assume he's just gotten off of work. He asked why I hadn't sent Ethan with Lacey this morning. "You know why," I angrily retorted. "Every time he goes over there, he comes home with bruises. He says that all you do is spend all of your time at work when you're supposed to be spending it with him. Eric responds, "He's a little boy. You know how rough he can be when he plays. And Lacey and I are getting married, so she's going to be his stepmother, and we plan on having children one day. Ethan will have a relationship with his siblings." I was so furious. No way in hell was I going to let that woman be any type of mother to my son. Months passed, and Ethan's birthday was right around the corner. I planned a Pokemon-themed party for him. Eric and I were no longer on good terms because Lacey and I didn't get along, so I didn't invite the two of them to the party. Ethan doesn't know what's going on between us, so I just told him that his dad couldn't make it because he had to work. Even after our fight months earlier, we were still cordial to each other until they scheduled their wedding for the same day as Ethan's birthday. I'm sure it was all Lacey's idea to have it on that specific day. When Ethan found out, he got mad and told them that he didn't want to come to the wedding. Lacey didn't seem to care, but Eric talked her into changing the date so that Ethan could be there. Since I wouldn't have Ethan on his birthday because he would be at his dad's, I decided to throw his party the weekend before. And you'll never guess who shows up. Eric and Lacey. And they bring 2 gifts. His father gives him a Nintendo Switch, which he's been begging us for the last few weeks leading up to his birthday. Along with that, he bought him 5 new games to play. Then Lacey hands him a little blue box wrapped with a bow. When Ethan opens it, he pulls out a piece of paper and he looks at it confused. He turns it around and holds it up for the rest of us to see. "You're going to be a big brother," Lacey shouts excitedly. That was the final straw for me. "Congratulations. Now get the hell out," I screamed angrily as I snatched the sonogram from Ethan and ripped it up into tiny pieces. I was so mad. How dare they show up at my home, where they know that they are not welcome, and ruin my son's birthday. As they are leaving, Lacey bends down and kisses Ethan on the cheek. "Next time you come over, you can help Dad move your stuff into the guest room to make space for your baby brother," she smugly tells him. Later that week, when it was time for Ethan to go to his dad's, he begged me not to make him go. I promised him, "Don't worry, buddy, everything will be okay." Later that evening, when I'm getting ready for bed, I receive a frantic call from Eric. He tells me that he's on his way to the hospital because Ethan had a seizure. He was awake and alert at the moment, but I could hear him crying in the background. I demanded to talk to him, but Eric told me that he kept throwing up every few minutes, so he was too sick to talk. I raced to the hospital. When I arrived, Eric met me downstairs and led me up to Ethan's room. He looked more than sick. He looked like he was practically dying. He was lying there in bed, drenched in sweat. There were nurses surrounding his bed, poking and prodding at him. When the doctor walks in, I ask, "What's wrong with my baby?" He asks Eric and I to step out of the room so that he can examine Ethan. I sit in the waiting room and just cry, not understanding what is going on. 2 hours later, Lacey shows up, strolling in as if everything is okay. She walks up to Eric smiling and plants a kiss on his lips. Then she places her shopping bags down on a chair and begins to pull out baby clothes to show to Eric. I approach her, not really sure of what I might do. Just as I reach the two of them and smack the baby blue onesie from her hands onto the floor, the doctor finally comes out. He tells us that Ethan is going through kidney failure. If he doesn't get a transplant within the next day or 2, he probably won't make it. I just stand there in shock. Me, his father, and all of his grandparents get tested, but none of us are matches for his blood type. Eric tries to talk Lacey into getting tested, but she refuses, saying that she just can't do it. "I'm too afraid of needles," she says. My child's life is on the line, and she's worried about a little needle? 2 days later, Ethan passes away. The doctor never did determine what caused his kidney failure, so against the wishes of his father and Lacey, I insisted that an autopsy be performed. They found nothing physically wrong with him that would have caused this, so they took some samples to test for toxicology. 6 weeks later, the results came back. Ethan died from antifreeze poisoning. The police questioned me, Eric, and Lacey. I told the lead detective on the case that I know it had to be Lacey who hurt him. She had something to do with it. I just know it. Every time Eric left him alone with her, he would come home with bruises. A few days later, I was in Ethan's room looking through his things. I picked up his Lego Pikachu from on top of his dresser and hugged it tightly to my chest. Tears began to stream down my face. As I fell to my knees, I dropped the Legos and they went sprawling across the floor. While bending down to pick them up, I caught sight of Ethan's reusable water bottle in the holder on the side of his backpack. I retrieve it, along with some other dishes that I find hiding in his room, and take them to the kitchen. When I remove the lid from his water bottle, a powerful, overwhelming odor escapes. I immediately place the lid back on the bottle and my mind begins to race. I think back to the night Ethan got sick. Lacey seemed not to care about any of it. Then after he died, she tried very hard to convince Eric not to have an autopsy done. She said that she wanted Ethan to rest in peace. Well, I can't rest until I know what happened to him. And recently, she's been trying to talk Eric into moving to another state, claiming that staying here is too hard for her to cope with Ethan's death. I don't believe a word that comes out of her mouth, but Eric falls for her bullshit each and every time. Then I recall something else that Ethan had told me before he died. I remember that time he told me that whenever Lacey would babysit him, she would make him drink those health shakes that he said tasted disgusting. I placed the water bottle in my purse and rushed to the car. As I head to my destination, I frantically try again and again to call the detective, the whole time wondering, could it really be? I'd always thought she had something to do with Ethan's death, but now I actually had proof. The detective didn't answer, so finally I just left him a message telling him where I was going. When I arrive, I bang on the front door like a mad woman. Eric answers the door and I bust inside, pulling out the water bottle from my purse. I tell him, this is what she put those drinks in that she was making him. Here, smell it. It has a strange odor to it, I insisted, shoving it towards him. He ignores me as Lacey walks into the living room asking what is going on. I'm taking this to the police right now to be tested. I know you poisoned my baby, I blurted out, waving the water bottle in front of her face. Then I tell her, I just came over here to warn you that you are going to jail. Your baby will never see your face, you murderer. Eric angrily escorts me to the door, telling me not to talk to his wife like that. But then Lacey stops him. It's okay, Eric. She's just upset. Come in and have a seat. Would you like some coffee or tea? She had to be kidding. Did she really think I was that stupid to accept a beverage from her when I was accusing her of poisoning my son? I scream at her, no! I don't want anything from you. I want my son back. Can you give me that? I can hear the police arriving and storming up to the house. When Eric opens the door to let them inside, the detective approaches me and I hand him the water bottle saying, here, you have to examine this. She poisoned him with those health drinks she was giving to him. He removes the water bottle from my hand and gently places it down on a nearby coffee table. I yell at Lacey, now you're going to jail. They know the truth now. The detective nods his head at an officer standing next to him, and then the cop steps forward and grabs me by the wrists. I stare in confusion at the detective and ask, what's going on? He tells me that I am under arrest for the murder of my son Ethan. You're making a huge mistake. The killer is standing right there, I tell them, glancing over at Lacey. I'm escorted to the squad car, and the drive over to the station is fairly silent besides me asking what in the hell is going on and getting no response. I'm taken to an interrogation room, and after waiting a while, the detective marches in and takes a seat. He again informs me that I am being charged with my son's murder, and then he asks if I would like to talk to him and answer his questions. I reply, yes, I'll talk to you. A moment later, another man walks into the room and takes a seat next to the detective. The detective begins, we found the antifreeze that you used to poison Ethan in your garage. I shake my head, denying it. I told you who did it. Lacey, it was her. She was putting it into his health shakes. Did you test the water bottle yet? I questioned. He answers, there's no need to. The water bottle smelled because it had been sitting in Ethan's room since he died. It was mold that you smelled, nothing else. Then he turns to the man sitting next to him. He pulls some papers out of a folder and lays them down on the table in front of me. The man introduces himself. I'm Dr. Hardwick. I'm a clinical psychiatrist and I would like to ask you a few questions. Is that okay? I nod, so he continues. The police spoke with the workers at your son's daycare, and they told us some things that we would like to verify. I have a number of statements here claiming that Ethan came to daycare many times with bruises. He told his teacher that he got them playing. I cut him off. Lacey put those bruises on him. He never had them until she showed up and began to babysit him. He says again, he told his teacher that he got them playing, but then he drew these. He pauses to lay out some of Ethan's drawings. I examine each one closely. Each paper has a line splitting it down the middle. On one side at the top it says Good Mom, and on the opposite side it says Other Mom. On the Good Mom side, Ethan and I look happy and are holding hands at the park. On the Other Mom side, she looks angry and Ethan looks scared. Her arms are raised in the air and it looks like she's about to pounce on him. He's huddled up in a corner of his room crying. I try to explain to the detective that I am the mom on the good side and Lacey is the mom on the other side. But the psychiatrist pulls out another picture that clearly shows Ethan with his dad and Lacey. They are all holding hands, and he even drew his new baby brother in the photo. They are all smiling and look very happy. I stare at the picture for a long time. The psychiatrist pulls out more pictures and tells me, in all of these pictures he drew of Lacey, he labels them either Lacey or stepmom. In the beginning of the relationship he called her Lacey, and then once her and his father got married, he started calling her his stepmom. In the rest of the pictures, he puts Good Mom, and they are always together with Other Mom. One seems kind and loving, which I think you are, and the other seems like she's trying to hurt him. No! I would never hurt my baby. That's Lacey. It has to be. I know it because he was scared to go over to their house. He would beg me not to make him go. The psychiatrist replies, that's the thing. I think that all of this started when Lacey came into the picture. I believe that he didn't want to go over there because he knew it made you angry. You would change into her whenever it was time for him to go to his dad's. Speaking of the other mom, can I talk to her? Why did you kill your son? I start to feel dizzy and the room begins to spin. All of the pictures on the table in front of me turn into one big blur. I begin to get a massive headache and I feel something wash over me. I feel like I no longer have control. Something other is taking over. Subscribe for a new story Mondays, Wednesdays, and don't forget Saturdays. See you next time on
Gina's Nightmares.
Really? You're supposed to click the like button, not me. Ugh.